What's happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the series finale of Legion, the 27th chapter, and a superhero saga that I think will definitely go down in pop culture history as one of the most stylish and innovative experiments with the superhero genre that we've ever seen. Tonight's episode brought the entire narrative full circle to a conclusion that I think most fans will find satisfying, or at least there won't be petitions signed by over 1 million people to redo it as we saw earlier this summer with Game of Thrones. I'll obviously be discussing spoilers, so if you haven't watched it yet, this is your first and only warning. But to start, I should acknowledge that I was expecting something a little more apocalyptic for the ending, but this show has always excelled at being unpredictable. Rather than have Farouk and David duke it out until they leave the world in cinders, instead, we were treated to what almost felt like a calm, meditative story where wisdom and love ultimately prevail, giving us a far happier ending than I ever envisioned, given all the carnage and warfare we've witnessed up till now. The biggest surprise for me was seeing how ultimately it fell on the shoulders of Charles Xavier and the older, wiser Farouk to undo the harm they did to David all those years ago, rewriting history and creating a new world where David and Sid can grow up in peace. I would have thought that David and Sid, the stars of the show, would have played a more central role in determining the outcome of the story, but we were treated as something of a reconciliation between the two of them before they fade into the ether to start their lives all over again. As the opening monologue teased, time travel does not allow one to change oneself, but to eradicate oneself, and that's precisely what happened. The ending was so serene and calm, I almost felt like I was emerging from a trance, and I think the ending totally works. It's a fitting send-off for the show, but part of me wishes we had witnessed at least one more psychic duel like the one in the Season 2 finale, a scene that for me stylistically represents the high watermark of the show. The opening scenes of the episode suggested that perhaps we were heading in that direction. We see David and Charles arming themselves with psychic weapons. After pulling the psychic bulb out of his ear, we see David change it into a flail, while Charles chooses to create a psychic bullet for his revolver, one of the coolest moments of the entire episode in my opinion. But as they charge in to confront Farouk, they find not one, but two, and David attacks the one I'm just going to call past Farouk as a way of distinguishing between the two characters, but obviously he chooses that one in order to prevent him from taking root in baby David's head. And then in the best line of the episode, the future Farouk turns to Charles and says, "I suppose this makes us dance partners, does it not?" Now, there are many things about this show that I'm going to miss, like Aubrey Plaza, but Naveed Negahban as Farouk has slowly but surely become my favorite character in the show. He's cooler than cool, and I hope this role opens the door to a lot of interesting parts being offered to him in the years to come. If I had to pick a weak link in this episode, I might argue that the battle between the Carrie, Sid, and the Time Eaters seemed a little bit like filler, just to give this episode some action. Sid's use of a shotgun versus the Time Eaters seemed a little uninspired, given what a threat they've been established to be in past episodes. But as it turns out, the Time Eater's true role is to guard the tributaries of time, and Switch, after she metamorphosizes into a four-dimensional being, she's able to get the Time Eaters back under control, as she now understands time is an ocean, not a river, and while losing her teeth throughout the season was absolutely horrifying to watch, as it turns out, Switch was only losing her baby teeth, and now she can take her place at her father's side as a being of godlike power. I have to say that Switch's arc from start to finish this season has been the strongest subplot by far. But the real showstopper of this episode has to be seeing the two duels between our psychic combatants. Future Farouk and Charles decide just to have a drink instead on the astral plane and talk things out, where Farouk admits that all of his years inside David's head changed him fundamentally, and that he now looks upon David almost like a son that he never had. And upon hearing this, Charles makes his proposition. Meanwhile, David and the past Farouk throw down in a really fun battle. David unleashes his legion of many versions of himself, where they just dogpile on top of Farouk, and then Farouk retaliates by trapping David back in a straitjacket. And it's then that we're treated to the coolest scene all episode, as David and then his mother launch into a music video where they sing Mother from Pink Floyd's truly classic album, The Wall. I can't emphasize enough just how much sentimental affection I have for that album. I listened to a ton of Pink Floyd with my friends back in high school and college, usually in a state of altered consciousness. But what was great is how right at the point in the show where most audiences would demand to see an epic battle, Noah Hawley has the audacity just to say, "You know what? I'm going to give you a music video instead," and it totally works. I think Noah Hawley totally gives James Gunn a run for his money when it comes to combining pop music classics with superhero action. And then just to put a little bow on the episode, Hawley treated us to The Who's Happy Jack over the closing credits, yet another tune that I listened to quite a bit growing up. So all's well that ends well. Charles decides to stay home and help raise David. In a very blasé fashion, he tells his wife that he and their adult son fought a mad tyrant together, but that his adventures are now over and he wants to be a dad. Presumably, David will get to do exactly what his adult self told Farouk, that he plans to be be a baby, a boy, and then a man. Just because I'm a little bit of a twisted individual, I wish there was some note of darkness to make this ending feel a little more bittersweet, but I obviously have to be content with what amounts to a full-blown happy ending. As far as what the future might hold for Noah Hawley, we have a ton of stuff to look forward to. Marvel TV boss Jeff Loeb would love to see Hawley come back and do some more superhero material for FX, but that'll obviously have to wait because coming October 4th, we have Noah Hawley's directorial debut, Lucy in the Sky, starring Natalie Portman and Dan Stevens. If you're interested, you can totally see the trailer online. And then in early 2020, Hawley will begin filming his new FX show, Cat's Cradle, based on the novel by Kurt Vonnegut. And then, of course, there's always the chance that he might get a chance to do Doctor Doom from Marvel. According to a recent interview, Hawley said that Kevin Feige recently asked him about a screenplay. Hawley suggested that Feige give it a read, but apparently Hawley's still waiting for Kevin Feige to get back to him. Hawley's quote was, "I would love to make it. Marvel, they have a 25,000-year plan. I just don't know if I fit into there. Personally, I can't imagine that Kevin Feige is just sitting on the screenplay and not getting back to him to at least say, hey, thanks, but no thanks, we'll pass." But fingers crossed at some point, Noah Hawley and Kevin Feige will find a project where they can collaborate. But it's safe to say at this point that Noah Hawley has a ton of credit in the bank with me. After Legion and Fargo, especially Season 2 of Fargo, I'm prepared to follow Noah Hawley wherever he wishes to take us in the future with his stories. But I think that's all I have to say on the series finale of Legion. It's been quite a ride. It's been a wild 3 seasons with its fair share of ups and downs, but there are highlights that are seared into my mind that I'll never forget. And in an era where too few filmmakers are given the opportunity to take bold creative risks with superhero material, I think as time goes by, we'll appreciate Legion more and more. But I hope you enjoyed this review. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you did. If you want to talk more about comics or superheroes or Legion or whatever, you can always find me on Twitter at Colrex. But can't thank you enough for watching. I really appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.